Welcome to Board Game Binge, the place where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode, we're welcoming back Richard MacRae from Analog Game Studios. Richard's newest title by Reiner Knizia, called Fruit Island, is currently on Kickstarter. Rich, welcome to the binge. How you doing, my friend?
Hey, I'm great. Thank you again for having me on Board Game Binge. It's really an honor to be here. Thanks.
Dude, I think you've been on like 3 times, I think, in the past. You're a returning guest. I love it. You're like the OG. You've been here right from the beginning, which is like super awesome. And also a fellow Canadian, so we all always run into each other at the different conventions and so forth. So it's a pleasure to have you back, my friend. And what a great thing to talk about today, which is going to be Fruit Island. We'll get into that in a little bit. And for those who don't know, we just had Reiner Knizia on the podcast to celebrate our 400th episode, which was just such an awesome episode. And on that, we kind of gave us a little bit of a snippet to Fruit Island. And I thought, hey, it makes sense. When we have Rich on, now let's talk about Fruit Island, given now that it's on Kickstarter. So before we get into that, Rich, can you give people just a quick overview of Analog Game Studios, kind of who you are, what you're all about, and all that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Analog Game Studios is your average indie board game studio, but we focus very much on games that have meaningful, accessible play and are modern. So, they update the old school style enjoyment that mainstream people enjoy playing, but with intelligent, clever, and simple to learn concepts in gameplay.
Now, how did you guys get started? Like, when did Analog Game Studios first start?
It started actually after I funded this really cool game called Centrix. It had these 6 tiers and they spun around. And I discovered that I really like the commercial side of board games. I like publishing, but there were all these brilliant board game designers that's what they want to do. They want to design games. So I felt, I want to stick with what I'm doing, the commercial side, developing the game and bringing it to market and getting it into retail and doing that. But I want to work with great game designers. And we've been really privileged to work with a really fabulous game designer with Reiner Knizia this time. So really happy about that.
So with Centrix, when it first came out, which again was kind of a smash hit, that was a co-design, I think, with another colleague you had, right?
Yeah, that's right. Corey Mikan and I designed this thing over a span of about a year.
Yeah.
And
it's cool to see like the evolution for people who are game designers and they get into this whole kind of publishing side, and then it's kind of that decision you got to make, right? Do I want to keep designing, which is kind of the largest time commitment, I would say, of the whole piece? Yeah. Or are you kind of hooked into the business? I love the business side, right? So are you hooked into the business side and the publishing side? It's like, okay, well, if we're going to do that, there's an unlimited number of talent out there making board games. Maybe I can start signing some of those guys and bringing them into the fold. So that's the path you've taken, which is kind of cool to see. I've been able to follow this trajectory over the years, which is really neat. Where I think you've been really good is kind of sticking in your lane too, right? So you'll see some companies where they'll do like a super heavy game, then they'll go and they'll do a light game, then they'll do something like a sci-fi theme, then they're into like a family theme. Like it's kind of all over the map. And the problem is when you do that, your audience is kind of very fragmented, where you seem to have been very good at kind of saying, no, here's my audience. Here's kind of the lane we're sticking in. Quite frankly, even the box size, I think, is pretty much exactly the same with every game you launch. That was a conscious decision, I assume, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, the box size, exactly. They look great when you line them up on a shelf all together. They're like uniform.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what our aim was. We want to have one voice speaking one thing, but very different games, very exciting new designs that align in the same way.
Yeah. What would you say has been your favorite title you've worked on, besides obviously Fruit Island?
Fruit Island was a lot of fun. I actually did enjoy Centrix. I'd have to say that Latte Throwdown was a lot of fun because I'm not really a dice kind of guy. It's our only dice game, actually.
Yeah.
but the art around it and everything that we developed around that, and how we were able to make something very, very simple come alive with these barista cards that allowed you to skew
Yeah.
things in your favor. Very creative, very clever design by an actual barista, actually.
Yeah. I have that one on my game shelf myself, and it's.
Right.
I think I was saying this the other day. We had a game night, and I'm like, I haven't pulled out Latte Throwdown in a while. I'm gonna bring that with me.
Cool.
It is what I love about it is it's so accessible, right? Like it's a kind of game where you can very quickly teach somebody who's maybe not even like a heavy gamer,
Hmm.
but want to understand like dice manipulation, things like that. Like it gets into those kind of core elements. Uh, but again, something you can put on the table very, very quick and like crank through a game really fast. So it's again another one of those ones I love to have in my game bag.
Nice. Yeah.
So when I was talking with Reiner and I was going and again for those who haven't checked out, go back and check out episode 400. Again, Dr. Reiner Knizia, the most prolific game designer in the entire industry. He's got, I think, something like 850 games and books to his credit. I think the actual game side itself is like 550. It's insane. How do you go about approaching someone like that to be able to license their title for, for your market? Is this an easy process? Is it tough? Like, how accessible is he to get to? Like, I got to him through you. That's how I met him. But yeah, how do you
Mm.
get to him?
We were really fortunate. He actually came to us after a Spiel event, uh, said we have a bunch of games, presented us with some options because he'd done his homework. He knew what kind of games we like to publish. So
Yeah.
uh, we reviewed about a dozen games or so, and this one, Fruit Island, was the one that really stood out. They're all brilliant. They're all very clever games. They're
Yeah.
all very simple, straightforward, easy, accessible, quick to learn. But they all have that moment, where you're making the decision, and it might be the wrong decision, and you don't know for sure. But he is a PhD in mathematics, so he's got that kind of brain wired into his board game design. So we didn't have to go to him, but he came to us, and we were really honored to take on Fruit Island.
I'm here sitting here thinking, where was my phone call? Why didn't he call me?
Well, maybe you weren't at Spiel that year. I don't know.
And then when he does his licensing, I know like he'll pick regions and so forth. So for this one, I think you have is it North America you have? Is it like
Yeah,
Western Hemisphere? Or how's it work?
that's right. You buy it. I mean, you license per country. We chose to do an initial Canada and the US
Yep.
and try that out. And if depending on how that all goes, we would very much like to look at expanding that to other
Hmm.
places, to other countries. Yeah.
How do you find that process? Like, I'm just thinking, I mean, I've licensed some game, I've had game designers I've licensed, right? And I know you have, the
Hmm.
most of your portfolio, quite frankly, are licensed games. How do you compare and contrast those two different, like someone who's kind of like an indie game designer who's looking to get into the industry, it might be their first title,
Hmm.
and that kind of dialogue versus someone like Reiner, where I mean they're driving the bus, like let's call a spade, right? Like he's so
Hmm.
prolific and his name brings a lot of weight. Um, how are those two processes different?
Uh, yeah, so we get a lot of momentum by partnering with Reiner Knizia. I
Yeah,
have to acknowledge that, obviously, but
yeah.
there's lots of game designers, and they also come out with pretty impressive products, pretty impressive mechanics and ideas for how to play a really clever game or an interesting new theme.
Hmm.
uh, you can you can find some real gems out there by someone who's never published a game,
Hmm.
if you allow yourself to be exposed to it, which we do. We do actually receive pitches unsolicited through our website, and we go to playtesting events, and that's where I very often have found some real gems.
Yeah. And you've built your network out too. Like I know there's different paths, right? So my path is predominantly just Kickstarter. So that's like 98% of or crowd let's call it crowdfunding because we just did Pocketopia through BackerKit.
Hmm.
But crowdfunding is like 98% of my direct to consumer market and then whatever's left over I usually just kind of, whittle away at through like Amazon or even through my own web store. But you've kind of taken a different path, right? So you've got and correct me if I'm wrong, kind of a retail focus. Use crowdfunding for the manufacturing end on the upfront of manufacturing to really kind of start the momentum or start the kind of ball rolling down the hill. But really, your focus has been retail. Can you talk a little bit about your distribution model and kind of how you've set up Analog?
Hmm. So we our focus is Canada and the
Mm,
US, and retail is key for sure. We've been in mass market retail, we've been in toy stores, and we've been in hobby game stores as well.
yeah,
And that is ultimately the bigger picture for us. But Kickstarter is helpful for a little indie game
yeah.
publisher like us. You don't have a lot of resources. You got to leverage financing, funding, and it helps us. It really, really, really helps a lot to just get the game funded initially with a crowdfunding campaign. The reward that you can give to your backers is they can get special things that won't be available through retail, and they'll get the game way sooner.
Hmm.
Like minimum 3 months before any retail, usually up to six, in some cases 12 months ahead. So we do care about our kids Kickstarter backers a lot. They make it happen for us.
Yeah, and I mean part of that too is there's usually something that is like unique to the campaign. Like I think you're doing like an early backer incentive. I don't know if you want to talk about it or not, but the most campaigns will have something that you're not going to get at retail, obviously, as well.
Mhm.
So that's kind of to reward the backers. But one thing I found was really cool, just recently I was on Pocketopia, right? And we were both just on that. You were on there with Kill the King, I was on there with Happy Heights.
Yeah.
And after we were done, we were trying to make this decision. Do we kind of merge everything together? Because we had these kind of expansions that we had kind of added on that people could pay for.
Right.
And what we found was that people were like, man, I wish this was just part of the game. Like you got these two printed ones that I can buy. You've got this print and play one. What would it take for all this to be part of the game? And like actually being able to have that conversation with your backers. And we
Mhm.
ultimately just said, you know what, we're gonna just put it all into the base game. And I had people saying, I
Oh,
will pay more to help
yeah.
you do that. I am backing you because I'm trying to support the development of this game. And when the backer said that to me, it's just a reminder, right? It's like
Yeah.
I think sometimes people fall into this trap that they think that Kickstarter is just mainly a pre-order store, right? But it's not. There's still those elements of backers that are saying, no, 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 I want to help direct how this thing kind of gets put together
Yeah.
and help this indie publisher, right? And so there's people that are doing this because they want to support the indie movement versus kind of some of the big, huge, classic board game companies, which are great companies and you can find their games at Walmart and things like this. But it's really the independents that are going to drive, I think, a lot of the innovation in the industry and bring that variety and kind of those little hidden gems, I guess I would say. So it's cool that you kind of recognize that it starts the crowdfunding is kind of the start of kind of the whole thing before it gets to the retail side.
Yeah. No, that's key actually. We love the idea that our crowdfunding backers jump in and propose ideas, and
Hmm.
they're brilliant ideas, things we didn't think about ourselves. So in a sense, you kind of get a grassroots game development effort going there, which that's wonderful when that happens. Very
Yeah.
heartwarming.
So for you, so Fruit Island is live on Kickstarter. I'll make sure I put a link in the show notes so people can check it out. Can you talk a little bit about like Fruit Island? Like how does this game play? What's this game about? Like what's the essence of this game?
Yeah, so I mean, the whole game comes down to one question every single turn. Do I bank my fruit and play it safe?
Yeah,
Or, do I move on to the next tree and harvest more, but risk the gorilla, taking everything? And Knizia makes that feel like really the hardest decision that you're going to make.
yeah,
Um, it's easy enough for a kid to play. Well, six and up is what it's rated at. But hobby gamers, and we've gotten this in tons of reviews too that have come through. Hobby gamers will feel, yes, I've actually played a game that was enjoyable, that wasn't, a old school mainstream game. I'm making actual decisions that are fun.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it was interesting. I got a chance to play an early edition of this, and my colleague was he was hoarding all the fruit, right? And he's kind of got his chest puffed because he just had this like a stack of fruit in front of him. And I'm like, you better bank it. You better bank it. And sure enough, he gets hit by the gorilla and he lost it all. And he's just like, oh, for the love of God. Right. So it's that's what I thought was really cool, right? Is like it's like, okay, at what point do you return back to the market and cash it in? Or do you get greedy and kind of is it kind of like a push your luck element, right? Or do I push my
Yeah,
luck and keep going for more?
yeah,
Um, but it's done in such an elegant way, which I think Kenichi is very well known for, right? Is coming up with mechanisms that are simplified but tie in very well together, right?
yeah, exactly. He's
And
brilliant.
can you talk about the components a bit? I got some of them here as well. So here's like the 80-pound
Yeah.
gorilla.
So our artist Cesar Ayala, which I know that Tin Robot Games has used too, he did a
Yeah,
great job in projecting how that gorilla, how the monkeys would look like. Actually, online, we've been doing a bunch of posts leading up to the campaign, and we've gotten a lot of great feedback. The monkeys look so cute,
yeah.
and the art and stuff was so fun and bold. Yeah, adorable. So yeah. So yeah, we feel we really lucked out. Not only do we have a great designer with us, but the artist was able to interpret that in terms of what this game should mean to the players when they play it as well. Yeah.
I'm curious, does Kineetsu ever direct that in their like licensing agreement that you cannot use AI at all? Because I mean, this is all illustrated, right? So Caesar has
Oh,
done a bunch of Tin Robot
yeah,
games as well. Great artist. I mean, he did a fantastic job at this game.
yeah.
Um, but I could see someone saying, "Oh, I'll just generate that using AI." Is there anything in his licensing that says, "Hey guys, like we've got kind of a certain standard that you have to adheres to at all?" Or
You know, he doesn't for this game. He might actually conceivably adopt that in future, I suppose. But no, he didn't specify, and it's not something we do anyway. We
yeah, I
go
know.
to an
Yeah,
artist, we get it done properly with an artist that we respect. We pick different artists depending on the game too.
yeah.
So he has not done that yet, but you're probably right. He should, right?
Yeah, you would think, right?
Uh,
Because there's always a risk that someone licenses a game and then they use like I'll put in quotation marks, AI slop, and like that's going to degrade his brand, right? The
yeah,
Knizia brand. So I would think you would probably want to avoid that. Now, I should have asked him that on the podcast. That would have been a great question.
yeah.
Where do you see this industry going, Rich? Like, I know I've been watching you kind of through LinkedIn and kind of your commentary, even in the Board Game Binge Facebook group, where you seem to have really been doing a lot of research on this industry and where it's going. Can you talk a little bit of where you might see it going, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I mean, base level, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a business
Yeah.
professional, right? So that's key as well. And it's the commercial side that interests me, as I was saying earlier. All the indications so far, all the research right now is pointing to growth in board games.
Mm.
Now, initially, I think the hobby gamer group, the hardcore hobby gamers, they were the pioneers. They really pushed through the idea that games have to be more interesting. There's got to be agency. There's got to be something a lot more than just roll and move kind of stuff. And they did a brilliant job in forcing game designers to come up with great ideas and a lot of fun games. Now what's happening is the mainstream is following in behind them going, hey, you know, there's some interesting stuff out there. It's a little too complicated for me. Maybe I'd like something that is more accessible and more interesting, you know, at my level. And that whole cohort is coming in behind the hobby gamers. And
Mm.
then there's this other group, the basically the Gen Z or Gen Z are going, I'm done with digital devices. I want something real. I want to interact face to face with pieces of cardboard and, you know, meeples, and
Mm.
actually have an enjoyable fun evening out with my friends or family in some cases. So those elements are actually driving growth in the board game industry, which is supposedly projected to double in the next 8 to 10 years in terms of dollars in North America, Europe at least, and growing in China too. We, for instance, recently signed our Centrix game with a Chinese board game publisher.
Oh,
Really
congrats. Wow.
excited about, yeah, and that'll come out in July. So seeing really good things in the whole board game market and board game industry, and it's because people want to actually do physical things together, just play games together, have fun together, be present with each other.
So you see the North American market continuing to, like, I can obviously see like China, which is underdeveloped, right, for their population growing.
Hmm.
And we're starting to see different pockets. I had a guest on a week ago that's in Vietnam, and they're starting to see
Right.
their board game cafes expand, and they're starting to see the market. And if I look at like even oh, what was the country like? I can't think of the one, but like yours, it almost starts with an export of talent in terms of like designers. So there'll be a country where maybe there's not a huge resale market in like a retail market of board games in that area, but you've got board game cafes springing up everywhere, and you've got people who have designing thoughts, putting games out and then sending them globally into other markets.
Hmm.
I was talking to a friend the other day that was asking about this. They said, do you see the market tapering off at all? And what I said to them was like, we'll make what, why you, where's this question coming from? And the comment is that when they got in, everyone was going bananas, right? Like I just want to back everything and fill up my
Hmm.
calexes and get a wall of calexes of games. And those same people now are starting to downsize and sell off shelf of shame games that they're not playing and things like that. Do you see another layer of people coming in to replace those group? Because it would require new entries to constantly come in. Is that the Gen Z that you're thinking?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The hobby gamer segment is a very, very small segment of the whole
Yeah.
board game market and board game industry. The mainstream coming into this market and wanting interesting, accessible board games is way bigger. It's the gorilla coming in actually to
Mm.
take your fruit, so to speak.
The gorilla coming in, absolutely.
That's it.
So like I'm thinking to like back to like kind of family game night, right? Of the back in the 80s, right? That was like you'd have like family game night, and I mean there was
Mhm.
no electronic devices and things back then. People would get together, and that was kind of their way of socializing. This desire to kind of get the electronics put down, or kind of like in increasing your presence. And I know that you had this a couple months ago. I saw something that you put on one of the sites where you're talking about like a presence score, and in helping families understand or measure ways to increase kind of the quality face to face. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, so after we were observing what was happening in the market
yeah.
and why, we figured, well, there's a lot of people who haven't seen this or haven't maybe necessarily had this experience, but are suffering from the digital drift, as we called it. They're having this presence deficit. You know, you come home, you have dinner, and maybe the family sits around and everyone's on their own screen. They're not really interacting with each other. So we created a something called the presence score. And if you go to presencedeficit.com, so presencedeficit.com,
Hmm.
you can answer 12 questions and it'll give you a score as to what level of presence do you have with your friends, your family, and generally. And well, eventually we will offer up games that can sort of be suitable for friends or
Mm.
family or other purposes. But for now, it's just a tool for people to kind of get a sense for, well, where am I? Do I need some help? Do I need some guidance, or am I doing really well? And it's kind of a fun way to find out and kind of
I
get a
imagine the answer is no
score.
one is doing well,
Well,
and
we
everyone has a
we
presence deficit.
yeah, we get the scores, so we look at them and we
Yeah.
see as people do fill out the information and kind of see where those scores are. It's quite interesting, actually.
That's yeah.
The most interesting actually is have them do it twice. So they fill it out to start, and then they go off and play board games or do whatever, and then see where the score goes after. I'm obviously be a higher, but
It'd be
yeah.
cool to see how that goes from like doing the presence score and almost then have that, as you're saying, then feed into maybe another kind of question answer of, okay, of the people that are in around your table, how many have played hobby board games? how many are first timers, how
Mm.
many, like maybe 5 or 6 questions that then spits out, okay, well, here's the kind of game you guys are want to play. You've got an hour or you've got like 30 minutes. Like, if you need something like, you've got people who are non-gamers in there,
Mm.
maybe take something as simple as Splendor, right? Okay, well, now we recommend you should play maybe Splendor or maybe Sequence or something that,
Yeah.
if they're used to playing cards, then maybe start them off with Sequence and pull them in that way. That's kind of a cool concept. One thing I noticed was the other day I was in someone's house and they had a dining room. And it made me think, I'm like, you don't really see houses built with dining rooms anymore. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's usually these wide open kitchens, which have the kitchen becomes kind of like the dining room. And that's a reflective, I think, of today's society, right? Where you have, the classic family unit where you'd sit around the table and talk about your day and what did everybody do, and then maybe after dinner clear the table and you maybe continue on with the game. Now all that's moved to the kitchen, or quite frankly, sadly, to the couch, right? Where people are sitting in front of their TV. Like I've got friends that don't even have tables. Like they make dinner and they sit on their
Wow.
couch and they eat on their couch.
Yeah.
Not because they can't fit a table or they can't afford a table. It's they don't see the utility in the table. And that kind of makes me think that, like everything, I think trends usually are cyclical. And usually you see it gets darkest before the light starts coming, right? And I think that's probably where we're peeking out the other end of that now, where you know people are too disengaged, where they're hungry, and even the younger generation's hungry to find ways to interact.
Hmm.
And instead of going out to a bar or something like this, less and less people are even drinking now. There's looking for other ways to kind of socialize, and I think that's probably why you're seeing these board game cafes continue to pop up, continue to be successful, and really generate interest in the hobby, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
That's very true. That's what we're seeing at our end too, and very um, key to what we're doing because we want to be in an industry that's growing, that's expanding, that's giving us room for indie game publishers to actually succeed and grow along with that.
So next on deck for you is obviously Fruit Island, which is live now. I encourage people to check it out. You also have, you mentioned Centrix that's coming out in China. Is there anything else you can talk about or give us a sneak peek to that you're got kind of brewing in the background?
We have a couple of things. Our focus has been so hard straight on Fruit Island in the last 6 months,
Yeah.
but we are gonna come up with a new Centrix release. It's going to be a kind of a big remake.
Oh, that's
Right
cool.
now, it's quite large and it's quite well, cumbersome, I suppose, because of its
Hmm.
size. And that serves a good segment too, especially the family size. But it's a brilliant game in itself. And we're toying with various themes, for instance,
Yeah.
because it's an abstract game right now. I think that is where we're going to turn our minds to after Fruit Island is where can we give new life into Centrix because it came out back in 2019. It's been a while. It's it just needs a refresh.
Yeah.
So,
I find that like when I look at my own portfolio and most hobby board games are printing 1,000 or 1,500 copies and then they're on to the next game, right?
mhm.
So hobby games are typically not like you see with like the mass market games where they're making hundreds of thousands and they're kind of these evergreens. Most of them are like I'd say 98% of all games short run and then they're on to the next game. And it
Mhm.
begs a question. There's a lot more than say 1,500 people playing board games around the world, obviously, right? So
Mhm.
is there a market to refresh some of these games? And I often think about this. And I know like a lot of retailers, for instance, when I've been selling my own games to retailers or trying to go through like a consolidator or one of these things, they'll say, well, that game is like it's like a year and a half old, so it's now kind of seen as like dated, right? And they always want the kind of the newest shiny object. And it really begs the question, is there an area to start repackaging some of these games, refreshing them kind of like you're doing with Centrix and saying, hey, there's still more people out there that need to experience this. Let me give it kind of a little bit of an overhaul. Let me incorporate maybe some newer trends that we're seeing in terms of like shrinking box sizes down and so forth, and giving it some new legs. And I think that's a pretty smart approach.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we were really happy when Centrix won the Sparks Play Award
Yeah.
last fall, for instance. That was exciting. And it is actually up for some other awards, which I won't mention or talk about at this point, but we're hoping, obviously, it'll do well there. But Centrix has done very well for us in mainstream, in mass market, actually. So that's why it's kind of a flagship game for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, Rich, I want to congratulate you on securing a Knizia game. Let me just put that
Oh,
out there because dude, that
thanks.
is on my bucket list for sure. So you got there already, man. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Again, Fruit Island. I'm going to encourage people to check this out on Kickstarter. I'll put a link in the show notes. Just type in Fruit Island. You'll find it that way as well. But I always like to put a link in the show notes. And I want to wish you all the best in this campaign. I can't wait to see where you guys end up finishing.
Hey, thanks, man. I mean, just if the reviewers are any sign, then it's brilliant because we sent out almost 50 copies of Fruit Island, and every reviewer has been positive about it. So I mean, that's awesome.
Oh, you
Yeah,
couldn't ask for more, eh?
yeah.
All right, my friend, you take care. Cheers.
Thanks. Cheers.
This has been an episode of the Board Game Binge podcast, hosted by James Staley, produced by James Staley and Mike Bruner, with original music by Nick Smith. If you would like to watch these interviews live, simply subscribe to our YouTube channel, Board Game Binge, and you'll get access to live interviews, giveaways, and interesting board game content from across the industry. I can't wait for you to join us. See you next time.